Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to this week's episode of the Hearts of Men podcast, hosted by the Empowering Perspective community. We're your hosts for this evening's discussion. I am Dwayne Dwyer, also known as the Mindset Coach, and I am joined by my brothers. So, starting on this side, that guy over there, right? We're talking about Mr. Roland Walker himself. Again, not to be confused with Roland Martin, right? Because Mr. Walker is known as Poor Man's Dr. Phil, or as he's affectionately known as a man of many hats. All right, on my other side is the Uncle Junior himself, Mr. Garfield Martin, the Unc with the Funk. Below us, I have these fine gentlemen. Starting on the left side, we have the son of Timothy, Mr. Tawami Gaddy, also known as, and I got to say it like he says it, the available man. And also to his right is my brother Chris McClellan, right? Across the table, Chris McClellan, and he is still the angry guy.
Damn
Gentlemen,
right.
how are you doing on this fine Friday evening?
I'm well.
Doing
Glad
all
it's
right. All right.
Friday. I'm
Amen.
blessed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is also blessed to be with each and everybody on this fine Friday. Let me get my lighting situation. There we go. All right. It's great to be with everybody on this fine Friday. And also, I want to make sure that I give a warm shout out to everybody in the chat because trust me, we would not be who we are if it wasn't for you. So, welcome, Queen V, Miss Verlene McCoy. Always good to see you. Michelle Ray, Bernadette Simmons, Ravonda Jackson, Miss Crystal Everett. Good to see you. We cannot miss over Miss Charlotte Jordan. We cannot skip over her, right? Because she is awesome. Always good to see you, ma'am. And I want to make sure I got everybody. And for those people who we do not have in the chats as of yet, by all means, get in the chat, announce your presence because we want to celebrate you and welcome you to this evening's conversation. Um, Gentlemen, listen, we have talked about some things all the way up to this point, and we're going to start off with a new venture. Now, last week, we kind of talked about some things, and I talked about power, and I talked about the illusion of power. And so here we are this week, and we're going to talk about unlocking your full potential, which is ultimately going to be a guide to development with the 7 types of power. And I think this is going to be an awesome conversation because we're going to uncover a lot of things. Now, to get started, excuse me, to get started, what I'm going to do is just kind of break it down to you real quick because I want everybody to have a good understanding of what we're talking about as we start talking about these powers, right? So, first and foremost, we can just come to the conclusion that power is broken down into 2 categories. You have what is known as formal power, and you have personal power. So, formal power consists of legitimate power, coercive power, and also reward power. And when you look at personal power, you look at reference power, you look at expert power, you look at informational power, and you also look at connection power. And what we want to do is kind of break those down. And I am going to challenge these men because I want them to take it and tie in parenting with leadership. Yep, I said it, parenting and leadership, because I believe that parents are supposed to be leaders. And I think some of the concerns that we may have encountered is that unfortunately, and it's probably not by any virtue of just ill will or intent or whatever, but unfortunately, some parents don't have not matured into understanding how to flourish under that mantle of leadership. So that's really what this whole conversation is about. But before we dive into that, what I want to make sure that I'm doing is acknowledging our super supporters. Again, we appreciate you and we value you. So Bernadette Simmons, again, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And we want to make sure that we acknowledge that. Also, welcome MJ to the show and welcome Brianna Moore to the show. Again, good to see you guys and welcome. So, that being said, in this conversation of power, gentlemen, the first thing I'm going to drop in your lap is this reflective question. What pivotal moment or experience in your life that made you aware of the power dynamics at play in your personal or professional relationships? The floor is yours.
I'll start. Sergeant Martin, 2002. All right. February I got promoted. Actually it was April. April I got promoted to E5. I got promoted to sergeant. May I got in a fight. 2 months later, I was E4 again. Doing this the altercation or what happened was I got in a fight. It was me, it was my soldier, and it was 2 other guys. And what happened was there was an altercation between my soldier, who was an E4, and then who was a younger guy. Then there was 2 other lower enlisted guys that end up getting into a fight or altercation, whatever like this. So it was just talking back and forth, yada yada yada, and then next thing you know, push come to shove, and then there was a fight, and some people got beat up, and it wasn't a good, bad, or different. It was what it was. In that situation, I could have handled it better because I was the senior ranking person there and I was the non-commissioned officer. I didn't know until later on, sometime down the road, probably even once I made my E5 back, was that the power that I had was I could have easily diffused the situation because I had the stripes, and I could have said, hey, homeboy, a specialist, so and so, you y'all need to separate, go to your corners, blah, blah, blah. That was it. I didn't have to do anything else because of the power that I had of my position. I had that certain amount of authority that I could have used to diffuse the situation, but I didn't know that. You know what I mean? And then I also learned the power of a pen. You know what I mean? In the military, you can really, you can just not destroy, they do it, but you have the ability to destroy someone's career with the stripe of, with the swipe of a pen. You know what I'm saying? So once I learned that, I didn't feel the need to yell and do all of these different things as a non-commissioned officer because I had the power. I had a pen. So if you don't do what I ask you to do or what the Army rules and regulations say what you're going to do, then I ain't gonna argue and yell with you. All right, you either do what I say. I can't make you do what you're supposed to do, but I can make you wish you would have did what you were supposed to do. So, like I said, when I got the power and understanding that I didn't have to do blah blah blah, and I can just use a pen, it was a game changer.
I like that. I definitely like that, and I think most of the gentlemen on this panel can relate to that because it's probably something that we went through that actually closely relates. But I heard a couple of different types of power in there as well, and so as we're going to go through these conversations, I want everybody to kind of like identify not just the people on the panel, but everybody that's in the chat and listen abroad as well. So good point. Thank you for sharing that, brother. All right, who's next?
I think for me,
I,
my first experience with said power in the military was a negative experience because when they found out, because when you first get there, they run you back and forth, and then you got to get out in formation. And going into the building, I was used to taking my hat off, and I left my hat on the bed, so I came outside. We in formation. I'm in W's. I'm in the back, so I'm exposed. I ain't had no cap on. So they come out there. They like, where you from, private? Yada yada. And I told them I was from Detroit. So they started picking at me right then because I was from Detroit and didn't move like them. So I'm like, okay, cool. So they saying stuff and I still had that tongue. So I'm saying smart stuff back, not thinking. And then one day when I was sitting there reading that little book they tell you to read, I'm sitting on the floor reading. Drill sergeant walked by, he see me on the floor, and he said, what you doing, Private Walker? And then I said, I'm reading the book, Drill sergeant. He said, oh, you want to be a smart ass? I'm like, not today. I mean, I like that, but yeah. So he said, I had to take off my boots and I had to alligator crawl with just crawling with my arms, dragging my legs through the barracks back and forth. And every few feet, I had to say, I'm not a smart ass drill sergeant. And I'm like, but every time I said it, I made sure I looked at him and said it. And right then I was powerless because I wanted to get up and, lay some hands on him, give him a little blessing or two, but I couldn't do it. And feeling that vulnerability, I knew that I like, hey, if I'm gonna stay in this thing, I gotta get some rank because I don't like this.
I like it. I'm telling you, I'm identifying the different types of power as you guys are talk. I'm loving it. Keep it coming. Keep it coming.
my, I guess all three of ours are gonna really relate to the uniform, but for me, and the reason why I chose military was because the way that I can identify it for myself is, coming from the area I come from, living in, the city, it's big noise. Hey, yo, Tawami about to make it out. He about to go join the military. He about to do this or whatever the case may be. Big time, big time. And I didn't think anything of it. I understood rank structure and everything because I was, JRTC, so I understood, sergeant outrank, specialist, staff sergeant, officers, NCO kind of concept. But the real recognition of it was the first time I got in trouble, and I had to get on first sergeant, had to get on the carpet. Y'all know what that means. And first sergeant's talking to me. He's like, "Yo, I don't think you gonna cut it." I was like, "What you mean? This is the only thing I ever wanted to do. I better cut it." And what really made it hit home for me was the realization that this man is about to make me go all the way back home to the hood and tell everybody that I ain't that I didn't make it, that I'm right back here on the block and on the corner with the rest of them. I ain't different. I'm the same statistic they told us we were when we were coming up. You know what I mean? And so for me, it was a letdown, not just on myself, but I felt like I was letting down everybody that was watching to see what was going to happen. And I know I probably wasn't that important to the hood like I thought I was at 19, 18 years old, but in my mind, I was, because all my boys knew I was about to make this move. Nobody expected to see me come back home except for on leave in uniform. And here I am about to head home with just yeah. So that's when I realized that there's a power dynamic that can affect the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's real. I appreciate that, and I get it. I get it. There is a certain amount of power that exists based upon the possibilities of what can happen or the outcome of a certain situation, the influence that it may have in you, and just disappointing some people, or just and I hate to say it this way, but proving some people right, because there are some people out there that actually look forward to you failing. So I think that's the thing. So all great points. Again, I'm identifying these power dynamics. So very good. Brother Chris, what you got for us, man?
Mine is going to be a positive one. It's going to be about my current place of employment. I went into work dog tired. It was difficult for me to keep my eyes open. Like oh my God, my body was just worn out and everything. And so the dispatchers came over to my vehicle and asked me how I was doing. And I just told them, I'm like, "Hey man, I'm tired. I'm sleepy. I didn't really get that much sleep. I'm exhausted." The owner came over to my vehicle after they told the owner what I said. He came over to my vehicle and asked me, "Are you cool?" And I told him the same thing I told the dispatchers. He did something that never ever happened to me before. He asked me if I needed the day to go get some rest. I told him yes. He got somebody to replace me on the spot. I logged out of everything. I clocked out. I went home and I went to sleep. That to me is the type of power or the type of handling of power that is missing, because the owner of the DSP understood that in my condition, I'm not useful to him anyway. I shouldn't be behind the wheel of this big vehicle right here. You understand what I'm saying? He could have just said, "Tough it out." I'm pretty sure that if I was in the military and I woke up and I said I was tired, they would have said, "Tough it out." But he understood something. He understood that the power that he has is because of the people around him. It has nothing to it has something to do with him, but it really has nothing to do with him. You understand what I'm saying? Kind of both. Because without the people, you wouldn't have what you have. And I understood that I had a little bit of power by simply being honest and opening my mouth. You understand what I'm saying? So that would be mine.
I like it. I like it, and that's a great example of and I like the positive spin as well. Because you're right. In the military, they could care less if you were tired, bro. You know, you should have thought about that before you stayed up all night doing whatever it was you were doing. And trust me, there was a phrase that I used to hear all the time, right? And this is it's a phrase we used to hear all the time. But I tell you what, you're gonna be at work and you will like it. But listen, I agree with every last one of these aspects. And I'm agreeing with Michelle comment in the chat. Like that's great leadership. Exactly. I mean, when the owner comes to you and say, "Hey, then, do you need a day?" Because let's just look at the other side of it. With you being as tired as you were, you know, you could have injured yourself or somebody else trying to, do your job throughout the course of the day. So that is the perfect call for a leader to make.
But see, I also did something too. After he asked me if I needed a day, I asked him if he could replace me. When he said yes, I said yes.
Yeah,
And then I went home.
absolutely.
Because it wasn't about, there are a lot of people out here, mainly the young folks, who use any excuse to not work.
Mm.
And I don't even want to be grouped into that. So that's
Yeah.
why I ask questions before I say, all right, this is how I'm feeling. I'll tough it out if you need me to, but I really want to go home and go to sleep.
Yeah,
And he would rather me go home and go to sleep than try to tough it out. You understand what I'm saying?
absolutely. Yeah. So I definitely appreciate that. For me, I'm gonna kind of go back to the whole military thing, but then I'm gonna turn it into a home thing as well. Because we all came up in the era of be all you can be, and I'm understanding that the army is transferring back to the be all you can be model, right? So I literally wanted to be all I can be. I wanted to be really good at my job. And it was so bad that I would look at people and model the behavior that I thought was positive, and then look at people to the behavior that wasn't positive, and I would be like, no. Um, so that being said, I I really wanted to be good at my job, and I thought I was, not just the job itself, but the people aspect of jobs of the job itself. So I wanted to be a good leader. It really came full circle to me when we were getting ready to deploy to Iraq, Roland. I don't know if I ever shared the story with you. And one of my soldiers had to go before the commander. I'm not going to tell you why. He just had to go before. Unfortunately, he did a thing to where he was getting ready to be chapter. So he had to go see the battalion commander. And so myself and some first class majors, my platoon sergeant, we're standing side by side. And the commander asked him and said, "Okay, we know you already started the chapter process, but we're getting ready to deploy and you have the opportunity not to get out. What do you want to do?" And he stood there for a second and he looked back at me and Sergeant Majors and he said, "I want to go where he goes." And at that point, man, it kind of hit me right there. And then the commander kicked him out and asked what we were doing. Like that soldier has a chance to leave scot free, but he is willing to stay and deploy and fight for the country the whole nine. And the only thing we could tell him is that we just do our job, sir. We just train soldiers and do what we're supposed to do. And it really touched me because at that moment, I realized how influential you can be on another person's life. A leader can be over another person's life. If you just do the right thing and take care of them, it really it really shows like what can actually happen. Right now, transition. I'm the same dude that couldn't get his kids to clean his room, so it's just one of those things. And it's like you got to keep reminding them and keep reminding them and keep reminding them. And I know every parent that's under the sound of my voice right now understands exactly what that is like. So that's kind of like the aspects that I want to look at from my perspective, when it comes down to my personal moments of personal and my moments of personal and professional relationships in the aspects of power dynamics, because it is that vast of a thing. And what I really want to do is kind of dive into this conversation, both feet. But before doing so, I want to make sure I acknowledge everybody who's in the chat. I want to make sure I didn't leave anybody out. Miss Teresa Austin, welcome and thank you so much for continuing to be a super supporter. We greatly appreciate you. And I think I got everybody else. So as we press forward, um, we're talking about the 7 types of leadership power. Again, we're going to tie them together from a leadership or work aspect to a relationship and family aspect as well. And I mentioned before, first, there are there are two categories, right? You got formal and you got personal. So we're going to focus our energy and conversation right now on formal power. And remember, there are three types of formal power. You have legitimate power, you also have coercive power, and you also have reward power. So, first, legitimate power. I will put this up here and I'll just kind of make it make sense in its entirety. So, legitimate power is the power that comes with a formal position or authority. A person with legitimate authority receives recognition because of their job title or assigned position. For example, if you a team lead, if you are a team lead, your team members will comply with your request because they accept the legitimacy of the formal power assigned to you as a leader. With that being said, what I want to do is kind of throw this question on the table real quick. What are some of the challenges that leaders and parents face in maintaining legitimate power?
Some of the challenges. So I think one of the challenges that I may see, whether it's a parent or whether it's on a job, would be you always setting the example. Because sometimes I just don't feel like being right. Sometimes I just want to let my hair down or not be the person, the role model in said instance. But I know that in the workplace, if you're in charge of people, you have people looking at you just like at home, you have people looking at you. So you can't be the slacker when you're in leadership. And if you are, it'll show and you won't be leading for long.
I always start with I talked about military. Now I'm gonna go to family. Coach started talking about it, but I'm gonna go a little bit deeper. He started talking about, the different things in the military, but you can't get your kids to clean their room. I've guilty, guilty as charged. Similar. Me and Coach have a lot of similarities in our background with passes, which is crazy. So here's another one. I would say one of the challenges that leaders and parents face in managing and maintaining legitimate power is managing conflicts in the house. Last night, me, my wife, and my two younger sons, we had a powwow last night, and it went well. And sometimes, everybody's good in the house, you know what I mean? But it hadn't always been that way in every relationship or whatever that goes on in the house. Sometimes people, they butt heads. Sometimes people are transitioning, they're going through different stages of their life, especially when you have teenagers and everybody doesn't necessarily get along. And then as the leader, just like last night, I'm playing different roles. I'm the husband, I'm the head of the house, I'm the father. So you having to wear, like Roland, the man of many hats. Fathers and parents have to do the same thing. And when there is conflict or chaos going on in the house, you have to be able to be somewhat effective or efficient in being able to manage the different conflicts that go on. So I think that managing conflicts is definitely a challenge.
I think for me, I would say it would be in a sense, the personable aspect. And I wanted to use that word rather than empathy because it's a little different to me in this aspect when we're talking about uh, parenting or leadership, because I think sometimes as parents, at 37 years old, I'm a little bit removed from being 11 to 8 years old, the ages of my kids. So sometimes I have to remind myself how I felt with certain things so I can try to understand the effect that my decisions are making on my children. Um, and same thing as a soldier, sometimes you get caught up in mission first that you forget first mission is the soldiers, is the people that's there, so that they can accomplish the mission, you know. And just like Coach say, sometimes clean. When I say clean your room and the room ain't clean, I get to reaching. We got. I know
Booty
I said
thing.
clean the room. Hey, quick. you know, but then then when I sit back, sometimes there's some instances, I am in no wise against the power of the belt, but there's also instances where I sit back afterwards and I say, was the belt effective in that situation? And yeah, it got them to do what I told them to do, but did it instill in them what I was trying to instill in them, which was the ability of, or the consistency of cleaning up after yourself? You know what I'm saying? Like, because there's a lot of things that as kids we didn't do because we didn't want to get in trouble. But when we turned 21 or 18, oh, you mean ain't nobody? I got my own apartment. Is on, So are they going to do it? Are they going to build the character of cleaning their room, or are they just going to do it because they don't want to get a whooping? So I think sometimes the ability to balance, mission versus the person, I think that's a real struggle, because sometimes I think it also creates a level of passiveness because you're afraid of offending the person. So it's not just on messing up by being too strict or whatever, but sometimes you can become too lenient because you are worried about how it affects the soldier or the child.
I do like what you said, sir. Chris, are you ready? Are you still processing, brother? I see you got this look on your face. And if you're still processing, that's okay.
I think I might have something
Okay.
because I'm hearing all of your stories. So the two main things that I can think of based off of what you guys just said is the inability to maintain the image over a substantial period of time because for some strange reason, like Lisa Keys just said, when people are viewed in a position of power, they're viewed as you can do no wrong, as opposed to I'm just here, but I'm still human too, and I still mess up. And the second one, based off of Unk and Tuame, is adaptability, because your kids are going to change and your team is going to change. So you have to adapt to your team. And to Unk's story, you got to listen to him too. So I guess one of the major challenges would be learning how to be that authoritative figure and learning how to facilitate and empower your team or empower your kids, because without the team, there is no team leader. You cannot have one without the other. And the team comes first before there is a leader. So that's just what I'm getting out of it.
Okay. I like it. Now let me because this is the point that I wanted to bring to the table with this question. You guys heard me mention before that parents have to be they have to be aware of when their child hit those transition gates. So every child go from this phase of life and then they hit a gate, then they go into another phase of life and things of that nature. So it's not that they never had legitimate power in the beginning. They've always had legitimate power just by virtue of being the parent, but also the parent also need to exercise a degree of maturity. So as that transition takes place, what ends up happening is that they kind of transition in conjunction with the child. So the way I handled my child between the ages of 1 and 8, it made, I'm saying, I'll say 1 and 10, it may look different at 11, so forth and so on. So you have to transition. I'm not saying that 10 is the transition point. It was just merely an example. So the parent transitions. So there may have been times where physical punishment may have been the thing, but then you transition out of physical punishment into conversation and then having them to think into what they've actually done so that they can become consciously aware of the repercussion of their actions. So one of the challenges for me, it kind of goes right along with what you said, Chris. One of the challenges for me that I would say is that the major challenge is that parents have to be aware of those gates when their children hit it, and then transition to the level of communication that their child is open to receive at that point. That doesn't diminish them as a parent. That does not diminish the legitimate power of their position as a parent. But only thing it does is it reinvigorates who they are in the life of that child. That's from the parent's perspective. Leaders, on the other hand, they need to understand that you're dealing with full grown adults. It is not your responsibility to raise an adult. The adult accept the position they accept the position according to the job description and their ability to do said job. Therefore, leader, your responsibility is to ensure that you challenge your subordinate and pull the best of them out, the best version of themselves out during the scope of them doing their job. So if you cannot do that, what you'll find is that the employee gets bored. The employee starts looking for other means of other means of employment, and also if they look at you, not necessarily believe that you are one of those leaders that should be in leadership position, they will start to challenge the respect level that your position is requesting of them. So I think when we look at this, legitimate power is a thing that, if I'm being completely honest, it doesn't necessarily come from the person. It comes from the position, but within the scope of that position, there is an awareness that takes place that this power exists on both ends, and how you exercise that power in the direction of your child or your subordinate is one thing. How that child receives it and views it is another thing as well. So all great responses. There was a question that I've seen from Miss Brianna Moore. Professionally, you need respect to maintain power. Do our kids have to respect us to maintain that power in our household? Gentlemen, let's eat.
I don't know. I'm not a parent. This is on y'all.
I would say when it comes to children, and it's just me, you got some older parents on here. I'm the baby parent, right? But for me, I believe that you have no power without respect. At that point, you have fear, and that's and I think when it comes to fear, I don't know if that's true power. Because at that point it's manipulation, right? You manipulate people to do things out of fear. But respect is you get people to do things. It's not coercion, but not to use the word, well, they like to tell us don't use the word leadership in the definition leadership, but it's, you're able to lead them into doing things, right? So I think that's a difference, because on the job, a little bit of fear might actually be a thing, because I'm more afraid of losing my paycheck than I am of telling you where you can go and how you can get this. I think when it comes to kids, as they get older, it has to be a respect thing.
I know I said that I am not a parent, and I know that I said that I did not know, but Tawame brought up a good point. So, and if I'm understanding it correctly, there are going to be different levels of how you show respect as the child grows. Am I correct? Okay. Well, then the respect aspect of it wouldn't be respect me because I'm mama or respect me because I'm dad. Respect me because I'm doing these things for you out of obligation, because I'm the reason you're here. You understand what I'm saying? Am I getting that right?
I think is my bad. Go ahead.
I think it ties into what you said earlier, Chris, when you said you have the team and the team leader. You can't have one without the other. See, when you can't have either without having said rules or said designated, saying, I am this, so this is what I do. This is what you do. And when we agree on that, then we can have a power dynamic, because mine is to tell you what to do. And when we agree to that, now we have a respect. You don't have to like it, respect it, because it's the agreed upon rules that were put forth. See, when we leadership is me just saying what the rules say, this is the standard, I'm setting it, you agreed to it, so you stand by it too. When you go outside of this standard, you go outside of outside of what we agreed upon. So now there is consequences for that.
So
Along,
it's a
can I jump in there too? Why you
okay. Yeah,
process
go
that?
ahead. Because like I said, man, I'm trying to
Yeah,
understand this.
You're good. You're good.
because and I'm seeing it now because I got these great older parents. By older, that their kids are older than mine. They're not old men. They're wise. Uh,
Very, very
around
good,
me.
sir. Very good.
See, so I did that. While I have young kids, so I'm able to see certain things differently. Uh, Respect is something that is organically created between parent and child, right? Simply by the bond a child has to their parent. But at the different stages that your child goes through, all right, I don't think that you don't earn the respect necessarily by see I do this, but you can lose that respect because it's organically built. But you can lose that respect by doing said actions, and I think that that's like some parents try to earn the respect from their kids, and in doing so they end up becoming more of a friend to their children. But there's an organic relationship that builds from child and parent, and it's your job to nurture that relationship and grow that relationship and not lose that organic respect. Because if you let Messiah tell it, man, I got a PhD in about 17 different things. I'm so smart to him because he respects me at that. That's how he sees me, and I can diminish that by doing the wrong thing, but I can't earn that. That's organically grown through our relationship as father son. Make sense?
You muted, Chris.
So it isn't position, it's facilitating the duties of the position that grants you that respect.
It is the position. It is the authority that is assigned to the position. The challenge with parenting, and I'm just being transparent. This is what I've seen. I'm gonna compare it to the workplace. I don't have to validate my position at work because you signed an agreement that says that this is what you're agreeing to do. Therefore, based upon my position, you understand that I am the supervisor, the manager, whatever the case may be. You also understand by your work agreement, there's a responsibility for you to behave a certain way because of the company, not because of you, not because of what you want to do, anything of that nature. On the other hand, this is something that parents have to teach. If they do not teach their children this, then what ends up happening is that not only does legitimate power loses its flavor, it also loses some of the other versions of power that we're going to talk about as time progresses. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
But it is 100% based upon the authority assigned to the position. It is the same as the military. I don't care if my commanding officer is an idiot. He is appointed over me. That's the thing. The fact that he is an idiot is a conversation that he and I need to have so I can help him to understand that he's an idiot. But I do not challenge the authority that comes along with that position.
So
Okay. Now,
if I'm
since
hearing,
you brought up,
go ahead.
you should, okay, you brought up the job aspect of it.
Mhm.
Now that I understand because that's contractual. What about if your mom or your dad is an idiot? You understand what I'm saying? How do you address that?
Well,
Well, let me.
go ahead, please. No, go ahead.
I don't know if I'm addressing this, but I'm gonna go back to the original question, and it may lead back to this question. So, I got a screen over here and notes down here, so that's why I'm jumping around. So, to Brianna Moore's question, do our kids have to respect us to maintain that power in our household? According to legitimate power, the power comes from the formal position of authority. So, in my opinion, the answer is no. You do not have to respect me. At the end of the day, I'm still going to be in that position. Whether or not you respect me or not, that's up to you. I'm still going to maintain the household regardless. Whether or not you're inside the household or not, that's a different story. But the household is still going to get maintained. And no, I think that you don't have to respect me based off of the definition of legitimate power. As we go into other different powers, maybe a little bit different. But go ahead, Chris, ask your question again. I messed it up.
No, you got it.
No, my question is simple. You're a kid. You've come of age where you can talk and you can form sentences and you know what feelings feel like. You know what thoughts are. You have something that you need to say, and your mom or your dad is an idiot. What do you do?
I think the answer to that I kind of alluded to previously. I said that parents have to teach this, right? I think one of the things that we have to understand is that growth is not only for the child, growth is also for the parent. So parents must intentionally grow under the aspect of the position that they're in. They cannot stay stuck in an antiquated mindset that says that you must do what I say to do simply because I am that person. So the parent grows into the position that they are actually in. That's ideal. That's how it should be. The child grows into a position of maturity and then later on becomes an adult. The parent's responsibility is to raise the child into a fully functioning adult that adds value to the environment and in the society, period. So if for whatever reason the parent doesn't mature, we still respect the fact that they're our parents, right? We don't necessarily openly challenge them under their roof and things of that nature and expect good things to happen. Though that math ain't mathing. You see what I'm saying? Once I become an adult and move out on my own, we should be to the point to where we can have some honest conversation. Hopefully, if we cannot, that's okay. I made an effort. I made an attempt. If you're not open to listen to, and again, I'm not barking, I'm not yelling orders, I'm not trying to belittle them or anything of that nature. It is just a conversation that I'm trying to have with them so that they can have a different level of awareness that they currently have as a parent. And that's helping them, hopefully, ideally, to look at themselves as said leader.
And in the military, we used to say that when it came to that whole respect thing, I used to tell my soldiers and kids, I used to say, I don't ask either one of y'all what to do. I tell you what to do. That's the dynamic of this relationship. Now, when it comes to a parent-child relationship where the parent really doesn't, because we have had parents who have had other demons, substance abuse issues and whatever, so that they weren't, or whatever it is, that they weren't just the greatest parent. They didn't mature in that parental realm. And when you have something that's immoral or unlawful in the military, you don't follow. It's the same as a kid. When it's immoral or unlawful, it's like, no, I ain't doing that. I mean, but I'm not going to blatantly disrespect your position. But I already know it's some things that I'm not doing because it, like you said, it didn't feel right. It doesn't sit well with me. And that's where I think we are trying to look at, we can't group parents and put them all in the same bowl and say, okay, everybody's the same, because we all come with different baggage.
Same with leaders. The exact same with
And,
leaders.
and your children process information differently, not just at home, but outside. Their outside influences that they come into the home with. So it kind of adjusts the way that you planned on dealing with them, but based upon what they see, what they hear, what their friends tell them. They hear about these Bill of Rights and they think that there's a constitution in the House of Gaddy when there's not. Like so sometimes they get that confused, and so you have to teach them. There's only one bill, and that's the bill that I pay, and you don't pay any. So
I
there
didn't
go
see
your.
House of Caddy in the Game of Thrones.
Oh my God, here we go. Listen, so this is what I was talking about right here. Right. So Michelle, she brings up a good point. I believe a challenge is being open to others' perspective and ideas. So this is the thing where parents have to mature. Like you don't always have the right answers. You also have to listen to what your child's saying so that you can understand life from their perspective as well. That's how you get to the point of understanding some of the challenges that they're experiencing. Let's be honest. I was born in 73. The challenges that kids are, experiencing now, they look different than what it looked like in the 80s and the 90s. So parents nowadays have to listen attentively to their child and then respond to that level, not act like they know everything. Let's see. Lisa, she said others' confidence in you. When one is in a position of authority, other view them as infallible. Yeah, I think we kind of touched on that. No person is perfect and no person has the best answer for every solution. You just come up with the best version of a response that values the child and the situation that they're in. Michelle said, I believe leaders should empower their subordinates, teach, mentor them so they understand your position. Absolutely. I want to make sure that I get to the rest of these as well, because I think, Brianna, you asked a phenomenal question. And I think we kind of got to an answer. Chris, I'm not sure whether or not you feel we answered your question in its entirety, brother. But I also, great, I'm sorry.
I say I had a little something to add to it, and it was based off of Miss Michelle's comment.
Okay.
And you kind of addressed it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But you said 3 words when you were explaining it initially. You said, under my roof.
Mhm.
What if the thing that you are doing under your roof is a detriment to me, and I come to you and say, it is a detriment to me, and you say, well, as long as you live here, you're going to do this?
Yeah.
I'm asking this question because I went through it, and I know there are a lot of other people out there that have gone through it too. What do you do then? So, and I'm not saying you have to answer it right now, but I am glad you brought up the fact that sometimes you are going to have to come down to your child's level and figure some things out so that way y'all can better move forward, as opposed to being this authoritative under my roof kind of person. Sometimes sometimes your children have something to say. And to be real, it might be something that changes your thought process too, because that kid might say something that you was missing when you was coming up that you always wanted.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Can I say something right here? This might start off sounding controversial, but just feel me for a second, right? Because just like no leader's perfect, no parent's perfect, and I get that some parents are just terrible, right? But I remember as a soldier, I've had some great leadership, and I had some leaderships that I just rather jump off a bridge than follow, right? They were that bad, right? But at the end, I had to follow with the understanding that in 18 months there's going to be a change of command, and they got to go, And but what it did was it shaped me, my good and my bad shaped me as a leader. And I go to say this, right? I don't, if the kid. There are cases that the answers are always different. Of course, the answers are always different, case by case. But even in that situation, I have learned in life that I can't write your story, and there's no answer that can go back and rewrite the story of another child. But what I can tell you is that today you bring a different value to a dynamic of brothers that I don't think you would have even come close to giving to this group if it wasn't for even the bad, because that bad has shaped you into the passion that you had. And I'm not just talking about just Chris, but all of us. Sometimes we get so caught up in how bad a situation was, but if you made it out of that situation, it has shaped you to bring value to every situation you are in, whether it's work, whether it's relationships, whether it's conversations, whether it's leadership. You have to learn how to even take your bad and realize how it has made you, and relish in that and grow in that. And you know what? You may not have been the best parent, mom, but thank you for making me who I am, because I'm better because I made it. And that's not to sound, too churchy or whatever the case may be, but that's just real. I think in other shows I done shared a little bit of what I've gone through, but I cannot take a look at my life today and say that I am even close to who I am if I hadn't been through what I've been through. So
It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy
Yes, sir.
statutes. So to your question, sir, I think I may have touched it earlier, right? So if and I want to make sure I'm clear again, we must grow with our children, right? It is imperative that each person, parent and child, grows, right? Parent can't stay complacent and just work and then just come back with the same mindset. If the parent does not accept the feedback from the child, hopefully the child has a relationship with auntie, uncle, whatever the case may be, so that they can actually talk to them. And then hopefully the brother and the sister can talk to the parent just to kind of help them understand what the child is trying to express to them that they may not necessarily be listening to attentively. That is an outlet. It may not be the most perfect way to handle a situation, but it is a way. I think all of us know the worst way or the worst case scenario in that situation to where we get another outside entity to come inside the home and remove the child. That's not ideal. Ideal is that the parent needs to make sure that they keep what the best interests of the child within their purview, right? The goal is to raise a healthy, functioning child. I keep stressing that piece because it's not that the child is there to serve the parent. I want to make sure I say that, but I want to make sure I keep it in context, right? The parent actually serves the child. The leader in an organization is a leader because of the team. So the leader serves the team. The leader provides resources in order for the team to function fully within the scope of their work. The parent provide the resources for the child in order for the child to mature, grow, and turn into a healthy, functioning adult. Uncle Junior gave a perfect example based upon the conversation he had with his family, and then he kind of shared what the result of that conversation turned into. I think that's the best way to look at it. There aren't, and Brother Gaddy said it. There's no such thing as perfect parents. There's no such thing as perfect children. There's no such thing as perfect employee. There's no such thing as perfect leaders. However, it is our responsibility to be the best version of who we are supposed to be within the scope of the thing that we're supposed to be doing. Go ahead, Roland. I'm sorry, brother.
I think to address this question that's still up here, because we've all been deployed. Well, most of us have been deployed, so we know what it's like to be gone for a year, over a year, whatever time frame is. Come back to a home that was still running, and kids are still active. And when you come back, what I used to have to tell myself is that I can't just come back and think, "Oh, I'm in daddy mode," because daddy ain't been here running things. Daddy wasn't here. So now I got to learn what the systems were. I got to see, okay, what's the environment now? Now I got to step in where I need to step in as a man. Like if the grass 2 feet tall, I got lawnmowers and I got young teenagers in there. It's a problem. Now daddy got to step in and I got to give some masculine energy and influence. That's part of my leadership. But I just can't come in barking orders because I just want to bark orders because it's not moving how I want it to move, or bills aren't paid how I want them to be paid. And that's what we see in the military system a lot of times, where the people come home from being overseas and everything. Then everything has been running, she's been running smooth, and you come in and just wreck everything because you the man. No, don't work like that. If it's a team effort, she's been running it. Hey, she was the quarterback. You got to play backup for a minute and get into the swing of things where the family structure now revolves around you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is my brother Dan Scuba Fox. Dan is an awesome guy, phenomenal leader, one of those officers in the army that I was talking about, right? No, he's not the idiot though. He's an awesome guy. I mean, great leader, John Maxwell guy as well. He is also a scuba instructor. So this question, I know for a fact he is asking for the masses as well. So great question, Dan, and Roland's absolutely right. I think the thing that we have to understand is that the child has a degree of consistency that has been going on in my absence, especially if I was gone for 12 months, 18 months, whatever that looks like. So one of the first things I need to do is come back and learn the system that is already in place, the system that she or he implemented in my absence, right? Or the system that the other parent has implemented in my absence, right? And so once I come in, observe, learn, ask questions, and just kind of ease my way back into the flow of things. Once I ease my way back into the flow of things, then we can talk. Me and the other parent, we can talk about making micro adjustments along the way. One of the things I've seen is that parents, like Roland say, they come back in and they want to make their presence felt initially. That's not good at all. It is very inconsistent, and it literally kind of does this. It's like a shock treatment, like giving a child a defibrillator. It gives shock to their environment, and it's not good. So great question. I'm glad you and listen, man. I appreciate all of these questions you guys are asking, because again, I will derail a whole show to answer your questions. I've said that before, and I'm gonna continue to say that. We may not even make it to question number 2, and I am okay with that. I'm just putting that out there. So Janelle Walker, good to see you. She said, I think conflict comes with delivery when teaching our children along with age. Many of us forget that our children are learning also as human. So I've always tried to set a position of respect when teaching them, due to the fact that I want them to understand what I'm trying to teach. Do what I'm trying to teach. Do with your teaching and delivery comes with respect. I think I missed the question. I see a question mark at the end. Do uh, I'm trying to teach. Do with Janelle, if you would do me a question and kind of restructure that, do me a favor and restructure that question, I would gladly come back to it. But thank you for that. Michelle Ray says setting boundaries earlier better. No boundaries brings disrespect and disobedience. Absolutely. Brianna said, I don't want my child to fear me. I want her to respect me, but I'm having a hard time treading that line. I do understand that. And I think every parent on here has experienced that at one point in time and another. Ravonda says, Brianna, it's not bad for a child to fear the parent to a certain degree. I definitely get that as well. Miss Verlene McCoy says, power comes from understanding your child and trying to work with that child or person. Absolutely. Miss Keys says, parents can influence the behaviors and attitudes of their children. If this is not possible, they must give instructions and limits to what is expectable in the household. Absolutely. All right, let me move down, because again, I want to make sure I catch everybody. You guys are awesome. Thank you for that. And listen, if this is your first time joining us, go ahead and put your cursor in the right corner of your screen, and you'll see the little icon. Go ahead and click on the subscribe button, and just hit the like button as well. While you guys are on here, in fact, everybody hit the like button. We like likes, and the algorithm like likes as well. And last but not least, share it and invite those people who you think will enjoy and benefit from these conversations. John, welcome to the show, brother. Always good to see you. Whew. I think we can get to question number 2. All right. So listen, I'm here for it. I'm loving it. I'm loving it because we're still on legitimate power, and I don't want to let it go until we have a good understanding. So, what are some examples of situations where individuals or group may not receive the recognition of legitimate power they deserve, and what are the consequences of this lack of recognition? I think we kind of beat one of them in the head a few seconds ago, but what are some other situations?
I would say I wrote down I went with the groups. I went with young people. I think sometimes us older generations sometimes don't give the younger generation the respect that some of them deserve. I think we're quick to say the young people are not doing this and not you and that. And I think that's a perfect one example of where some of the young group, they don't get the recognition of legitimate power that they've deserved. It's some young dudes out here that's killing it, but just because they're young, some older people will automatically dismiss them. You know what I mean? We had a conversation at the end of last year, and that was one of the things that we talked about, was that sometimes the younger generation, they're doing it and they're grinding, they're doing it, but they're just not doing it the way we do it. You know what I mean? We talked to some guys who wrote books, they own restaurants, all of these different things like that, and they're all at least 10 years younger than us. You know what I mean? Some of them are almost 20 years younger than us. And so I think that that's one big, huge situation where sometimes people don't get the recognition that they deserve. And I think that's a huge one with young people, because it just is what it is.
I like that point, and I think you're absolutely correct. And you know, I was fortunate to be a part of that conversation, and those were some sharp young men. And I agree with you. I think sometimes there's a tendency for an older person to kind of downplay some of the achievements of a younger person as well. Younger adults. We're not talking children at this point. We're talking adults. But all great, good point.
Yeah. I guess I should have finished up with the consequences, but uh, I'll come back to it, and I'll let somebody else spin it around a little bit, and then I'll come back to it.
Oh man. Wow. It's funny. What's his name? Dan Scuba. He put what I was going to address.
Right. I seen it.
Because it's you already knew where I was going, because it's, I deal with it with my oldest children, but definitely the non-custodial parent. So shout out to Dan Scuba, Fox, Alex for hitting that point, because I think it's easy for the other parent, when you're in a split home and a non-custodial parent, it is easy for the custodial parent to make the non-custodial parent seem obsolete when it comes to power, influence, or any type of authority, because a lot of us don't think so. But your children, especially when they get a little bit older, in the 8 up age, they understand, because they know when you are undermining the non-custodial parent's influence in this relationship. So I think that's a dangerous one, and the consequences comes in. There can be multiple consequences. One, when you need that custodial parent to step in, that child has lost all respect, because you've shown that child that they don't need to have respect for that other parent. And I know there's parents out there that are going to listen to this and say, but I tell them don't disrespect their daddy, or I tell them don't disrespect their mom. You could tell them whatever you want to tell them, but they see what you do, and they hear what you tell your girlfriends on the phone. I'm sorry. I'm trying not to put on my Chris impersonation on this one, but but we hear it all the time, man. And so the consequences, one of them can be you cause that child to have disrespect or disregard for the other parent, whether it's their mother, their father. And we do it all the time. And then the other part I think should be obvious, but it's not obvious today, is that the Most High don't make mistakes. So you can say what you want about whatever you want to say, but there's a reason why there are two parents in a home, biologically, naturally, and I understand that there's reasons sometimes why there's not two in your home, but for the masses. And so the child loses out on something when they don't have mommy or daddy constantly in their life and influencing their life. And that lack, sometimes the child starts blaming themselves. Am I the reason why daddy left, or am I the reason why mama left, or whatever the case may be? And they feel like they're not good enough for the other parent to stick around. So those can be some of the consequences. And I understand that there are ways to work that. I let Coach jump on that now. Back out.
Why you want to leave it to me to jump on? So I want to make sure I'm clearly understand. Go ahead, Roll. I'm sorry.
I thought you had your hand up. I thought you was like you next.
No. I was, but he kind of threw me out there in the street. But go ahead. You can go ahead, sir.
Okay. I think I go on the other side of that, because you have parents who don't really parent, who don't really hold their responsibilities to their heart and do their job, where they allow other people, other substances, other things to dictate how they raise or fail to raise their children. Yet then they say, I'm the mama, I'm the daddy. Well, if you were this, then we wouldn't be in this situation. And that's one of those things where, whether it be drugs, liquor, men, women, whatever takes you away from your parental responsibilities, can lead you astray, and then you come back and acting like you supposed to be the top dog in the house. It's like, come on now. Ain't nobody looking at you like top dog. They looking at you like you trash because that's how you are taking your responsibilities as a parent.
Is it possible for that this person that you speak of also be the person that he spoke of that prevents the non-custodial parent from being a part of that child's life?
Yes, possible. Same.
So when you threw me out in the street, that's where I was going to go with it, right? I'm okay with being thrown out in the street, by the way. So yeah, I agree with you. I think Dan, thank you, brother. The non-custodial parent, it is a challenge. Let's be completely transparent. Custodial or non-custodial only means that the relationship between the parents didn't work out. That doesn't make either one of them lesser of a parent. I want to stress that piece. It doesn't make either one of them lesser of a parent. For whatever reason, I think we've confused proximity with parenting. Parenting and proximity is not the same thing. I want to make sure I'm stressing it. I'm going to say it one more time for the people in the back. Parenting and proximity is not the same thing. Just because you're the one that spends more time with the child, that does not mean that you are more valuable than the other parent who just does not live in the same home. I like to make sure that that's clear. Here's another thing that I believe is something that we need to adopt. Parenting should be a joint venture. It should be not just a joint venture, it should be one where we assist one another. I like to use the term assist in relation to basketball, right? The assisting piece means that I set you up to do good for the sake of the child. So if that means that I need to have conversations with my child to push them in the direction of the non-custodial parent, that is essential. I want to make sure I say that because I think a lot of times what we don't think about is how it affects the child in the long run. Let me be perfectly clear. Brother Gaddis said that there are so many different things that can affect the child. One of the worst things is that that child never gains a clear sense of identity because every child is the perfect combination of both parents, not just you. I want to make sure I am clear by saying that because if you raise your child from a self-centered perspective, talking about I'm the only person, I'm the only person, I'm the only person, this, that, and the third, there will come a point in time in that child's life when that child wants to connect with their non-custodial parent, and they are scrambling, trying to understand their identity and build a relationship with that parent that you had the opportunity to facilitate, but it was more important for you to be the center of attention.
Yes, sir.
And they all got quiet on me after that. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Hey, but I knew you were gonna clean up the street. That's why I threw you out there. You know.
See, he always do that. He does that to me. Listen, we appreciate you guys, and again, I want to make sure I'm acknowledging everybody in the chat. Dan, greatly appreciate that statement, brother, because you hit a home run just by saying that. Let me see. John said the consequences can be falling off. Sometimes when you don't get the recognition, we tend to fall off. Hey, that is a true statement. That is
Yeah.
a true that is a true statement. It is very disheartening for a parent to try to no avail. And it kind of goes back to what I'm saying. If you're not assisting, again, it's a concern. It's an issue. You're not the most important person in that relationship. The child is. Miss Verly McCoy said, "Have you ever worked hard to achieve something special and then have it snatched away from you?" That is what young people are going through. Absolutely, absolutely. Losing the drive to continue on the path is also consequence. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was gonna actually address that one too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because you can break your neck and work your tail to the bone. You know you got this. And then you get there and you're in second.
Absolutely.
There's always that thing in the back of your head that says, why did I do all of this work just to lose? That's tough to deal with, especially when and it could be a little bit of arrogance too. because on any given Sunday, you understand what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
still, man, to bust your ass and know that you did everything that you were supposed to do the right way 10 to 20 to 30 times over and still come up short. That leads people down a dark path, because then it's like, why work hard? Why work hard just to lose? You
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying? So
And I would
that's
say
another
to your
consequence of it.
Yeah, and I would say to your point, I wouldn't say the right way, but the way that we know how. Because again, when we start talking right, some people may say that you did everything that you were supposed to do. That's not always the case. In most cases, you know, the non-custodial parent needs to fight to be in the game. I want
So,
to make sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
so I wanted to say, before you hit this question, can I ask a question that to me ties to this question? But I just want to, hear from the experts. So I'm with Dan, right? Now, what if you fought? What if you quit your career to be in the vicinity to be a co-parent, and you did all of this, and the custodial parent, along with manipulating the children, have created lies that almost sent you to jail and almost got your children with your spouse taken away off of lies and manipulation to get you under their control.
I think it's like if you're in the ocean. If you're in the ocean, when do you stop trying to survive? When do you stop trying to swim? When we talk about our kids, you don't stop. And I understand it gets hard. I understand you want to call her or him some names. You want to fight them. You want to do all these things. You're going through the system. They taking you through this and through that. But at the end of the day, my job is still to try as best as I can to raise the kids. It's never to give up on the kids because
I
go ahead.
I hear you, but so let me ask this question then: what is my responsibility to the kids that I am able to raise and the wife that is in my house? Because if your wife just had a baby while going through postpartum, she gets false claims pulled on her, and the kid and her infant almost taken away. Both her children at that time almost
Well,
taken away,
your job,
and her husband almost went to jail over this lie, because I
your job,
can't father nobody in jail.
you always
This
protect
goes to a different place.
yourself.
I think this goes to a different
Right.
this
We
goes
doing
into a different direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
goes into a different direction, because you're speaking as though the mom or the dad is using the child as a manipulation piece or a control mechanism, or they understand the kind of power that they have because there are certain things put in place for them to have that power. That's a whole nother line of that could be an episode in itself. And like I said, I worked in the system. I ran files pretty much from every court system downtown. I used to sit on a Tuesday. I know exactly what you're talking about because I've seen it done. However, we're talking about the responsibility of the non-custodial parent to at least try. You tried. If you can say, I did this and I did the best that I could, I went through all the loopholes and I did everything that I could to get there, and I still can't get there, sometimes you might have to take the L and wait on something to happen by the grace of God that changes your situation. If there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it because legally you've done everything that you can rest well at night. That's how I see it. And then once that child grows up and wants to get your side of the story, they'll come find you, because that's what a lot of these kids out here are doing now. They're going to find the other side of the story because they've been under one for so long. But it's still your responsibility to try. You understand what I'm saying? It's still, I will never not say that. And from what you're describing, you're trying. You understand what I'm saying? I would rather you say you trying than to say I'm not going to do anything at all because of these obstacles here. Because we as men, we can't afford to do that anymore. We have to try. We must be better.
Yeah. And that's why I have Dan's statement up here. He admits I lose a lot, but at least I'm on the field. And I think that's it. That's all you can only control what you can control. And I think that's the concept behind understanding these different types of power. And that's why I wanted to compare it from family dynamics to the workplace. It's easy for us to conceptualize it in a workplace dynamic. When it comes down to family and relationship, we mess it up a lot. And the issue is that we don't necessarily have the honest conversation about what the power dynamics look like within the scope of the family, just to understand where I may have made a mistake, where you may have made a mistake, or where some other people may have made a mistake. And it's not too late to turn back the hands, not time, but turn back your perspective so that you can go back and fix it. But in order to do it, and of course, Gaddy, this isn't you, right? I'm just saying this is why we're having a conversation. But in order to do that, you're going to first have to humble yourself. But if you do not, there's going to come a later point in time, and Chris said it, that child becomes an adult. That child is going to go talk to that non-custodial parent. That child may ask questions that non-custodial parent be like, "Are you sure you want to have this discussion?" Because I don't want to badmouth, because again, we are joint through you. I don't want to badmouth the other parent. But what was the conversation about? Because I want to make sure, I need to understand this. But what you have to understand is that you have to be honest. Everybody's going to have to come to the point of honesty on one side or the other. And that's the key. So great question. 555, book a session with coach. No, I'm joking. But but that is a great question. That is and I'm not making light of it, because there are people out there who experience the worst version of a situation. It is so mind-numbingly egregious that when we talk about it in a normal setting, people's like, "Oh my God, how did you ever make it through that?" Go ahead, Roland. I'm sorry. Oh, I thought you had your pen up, bro. You know how you like to do. You do your little church finger.
And Tuame, the situation that you were talking about, how the parent uses the kid as a bartering tool or a control mechanism, you're not. There are so many men out here going through that look like deadbeats just because they've done everything that they were supposed to do. They tried, and there was still something in the way. So they just stopped. You understand what I'm saying? It's not that they don't want to be there. They're just tired of fighting to do what they were supposed. They're tired of fighting to do what they're supposed to do. That's really what it is. And to your point, when they get older and they go seeking the truth, they turn into me. We do not need more me's out here. We do not need more men out here that are later on in their years trying to figure out some stuff that you should have taught them 10, 20, 30 years ago. We don't need any more of them.
Yeah, great points. Listen, I want to thank each and every one of you. I want to thank these gentlemen on the panel, man. I like the transparency and the openness and the ability to dive into a lot of these things that we're talking about. And I also want to thank everybody in the chat. Thank you for your questions. Your questions have been phenomenal. And again, I mean, I'm that person. I will say up front that I will derail an entire conversation to make sure that we get around to answering your questions. And I don't think that on either side you guys were disappointed. If we weren't disappointed by your questions, and I hope that we weren't disappointing by our responses. However, that being said, this is at that point, this is the bittersweet moment of the show where we start to transition into our final thoughts. And so with that being said, we get to turn it over to the youngest brother minister on the platform. We're going to turn it over to Mr. Tuame Gaddis so he can actually share his final thoughts.
I was trying to connect my keyboard because I didn't get to throw a song in the conversation today. And I wanted to leave y'all with it. I'm joking, coach. But this conversation kind of took a turn, and I'm not sure if coach had it orchestrated on purpose, but it took a turn to where it was actually encouraging in a lot of ways. So with that said, I don't really have much to say for my final thought today, but keep on encouraging each other, keep on encouraging yourselves. Like I think it's really important. I love community. I love brother and sisterhoods. I think we should always intermingle. Like if you're not on the Facebook empowering perspective, hop on it, and we just need to be encouraged, man. And just know that every day is a fight to get better, to move forward, to learn more, so that we can keep doing great things in this community. All right. Bless you.
Legitimate power in some form is in most of our lives. We're either in authoritative position or we're in some sort of a subordinate position. If you're in the leadership position, it's okay to understand that with legitimate power, it's not always easy. It comes with a lot of skill, it comes with a lot of effort, it comes with a lot of trials and errors. Being in any type of leadership position can be challenging, and like I said, it takes a lot to be effective at it. And most people don't necessarily learn how to be a leader overnight. I think sometimes there are born leaders. I also think that there are people who have worked and experienced a certain amount of things and learn enough information to become effective as leaders. So as we were talking about legitimate power tonight, I just think that it's just important that we all understand that legitimate power, along with the other power that we're going to get into it in the future weeks. So make sure you stand by and tune in. Is that it takes a certain amount of learning and continual learning to be effective when it comes to power in general.
I learned something tonight. Tonight was a good night. And the reason why I asked the questions that I asked is because these are questions that a lot of us want to ask, but we just don't know how. So you're going to be hearing a lot of questions about these things coming from me because I'm in the learning phase now, because we're talking about something that's never discussed in our community. So I'm thankful to be a part of it. Thank y'all for tuning in. That's my final thought.
You're muted, bro.
I see. Appreciate it. Chris ain't leave me. I thought he was gonna be a while. I was still thinking, but I think as parents and leaders, communication is the key. Communicate where your pitfalls are, and one thing I know as a parent, it's hard to hear when you've fallen, when you failed, or when whatever that looks like as a leader or a parent. So when you can have a discussion, have a talk with your family, what it allows is a therapeutic environment where everybody can get things off their chest and not have any reprisal simply because they feel a certain way. And it gives you time to not just pour out your heart, but do some explaining as to why you are doing the things that you're doing and leading the way that you're leading. And it also gives them some insight to what you're doing, as well as they can influence it by saying, well, if you would have done this or that, we would have taken it like this. And that's just all learning one another. When sometimes we are like ships in the wind. You going this way and I'm going that way. They're going to school, coming from school, and you don't really know your children. You don't know your soldiers. You don't know your people at work. But when you actually spend time, you're like, man, I can see that this person doesn't like to be talked to like this, or I can influence them in other ways. Whether like with kids, some kids we think, okay, if we take away their games, take away their this, take away their money, but some of them won't even respond to that. So when you learn one another and make that therapeutic environment, it's best for the whole, especially when you're leading, because you can't just lead and say I'm the leader, yet you aren't learning your followers.
Listen, I don't need to get center stage because these gentlemen said it all. But always, where is it? Um, this is why we do what we do. I'm always touched by these statements because, and they know it. You know, I think Gaddy he started off by saying he don't know whether I had this plan. It is always my goal to make sure that we give you guys the best version of ourselves every Friday night. But stuff like this right here helps me to understand that all of the time, energy, and efforts that we put into orchestrating these conversations, it's all worth it because we understand that. Again, you guys are appreciating. You guys are finding value in these conversations. And again, I always get close to being teary-eyed, so I'm gonna man up real quick. But listen, you guys are awesome. We appreciate you. We love you guys. Have a great rest of your evening. Again, don't forget next week, same time, same channel, we would do it again. And we're going to continue. We're just on point number 2. I want to make sure I add that. I don't think you understand how good this conversation was. We're on point number 2 about when it comes down to the 7 types of leadership power. And we're comparing them from between leadership and the family dynamics. So again, join us again next week as we continue to unpack this heartfelt conversation. Again, have a great rest of your evening and have a phenomenal weekend. And we will see you next week.